All right, with this COVID-19 situation and the economic slowdown we're experiencing across the whole nation today, is it rivaling what happened in '08? Well, in this video, we're going to be going over the 5 things you need to know that differentiate '08 from this COVID situation today. So stay tuned. What's up, everybody? This is Jackson Ray Wilkey.
And Jesse Ray Dow.
And we are the Real Agent Now group right here in the Portland Metro. If this is your first time to this channel, you want to know everything about working, eating, sleeping, living, playing, and that housing market, make sure you tap that subscribe button and you click the little bell so you're notified every time we do a new video. And we literally get phone calls, emails, texts every single day, and we absolutely love it. If you're thinking about moving, relocating anywhere here or Southwest Washington, make sure you give us a call, shoot us a text, send us an email, or even send us that pigeon carrier. However you want to get a hold of us, we got your back when moving to the Portland Metro. Okay, I'm going to kick this off. Jesse's really brought us a presentation today, so I'm actually going to shrink us down, get us in the bottom of this screen, and we're going to let Jesse go and talk about these things. So first and foremost, let me get that going. I can hit Command 4. There we are. Jesse, with we'll get right into it with the recession and equaling a housing crisis. This is something you really wanted to touch on first and foremost. Why don't you go?
Yeah, I definitely do, because we get a lot of clients and a lot of people in the media talking about, whether or not 2008 is going to be repeated now with this COVID-19 situation. And it's a very fair question, because a lot of people only remember the last recession as being the housing crisis recession. And that's what took the housing market, from a very rapidly growing industry to a complete standstill. But there are 5 key indicators that we look at of why we do not believe that we are going to see a relapse of 2008. But what we're seeing in today's economical standpoint is very, very we are still seeing houses being sold, we are still seeing very low inventories, and we are seeing very steady rates out there, and we have people that are still willing purchasers and people that are still willing buyers. As long as you have a low inventory, which we would call the supply, and a high demand, which is obviously the demand, it's going to still continue to keep our housing market at a very, very strong position. Okay, so now looking at this chart, this is showing over the course of the last 5 recessions, what did the housing market do? So as you can see, in 1980, the housing market actually grew by 6.1%. In 81, it was 3.5%. In 1991, it dropped 1.9. 2001, when the tech bubble bursted and we went to that big recession, it still grew by 6.6%. And obviously the one that we know very close and dear to our hearts was the economical housing crisis recession of 2008, which the housing market dropped 19.7%. I added the it's big time. I added the Great Depression over there on the far left because we saw 27% unemployment rate over about a 6-year mark, yet the housing market only deflated about 7%. So if your house was worth $100,000 back then, by the time that was over, it was worth $93,000. Economists still cannot explain to this day why housing prices do not correlate to the economy and follow the depressions or the recessions of America. And, I do know that there are some key indicators out there of exactly, maybe why the housing market wouldn't follow. It's a core acronym that I like to say. It's TIC, it's trend, indicators, and conditions. And we all know in 2008, the mortgage industry caused the recession. That is why you see such a dramatic drop off in housing values in 2008 versus all the other recessions leading into that one.
All right, so we're going to move on here, Jesse, and this is what you were just talking about, economist projections. Walk us through this.
Yes, so in 2019, and they do this every year, they talk to the brightest economists in the United States. This is 100 of the top leading people that study the industry inside and out. So this is from 2019, and this is when they projected a recession would come. So we do hear a lot of people always saying, yeah, that they knew a recession was coming or they predicted a recession was on the way, but nobody foreseen that we were going to have a health crisis. That's what we are in now. We are in a COVID-19 health crisis. A recession is technically multiple quarters in a row of declining economy. Right now, we are in about 1 month in, so we do not know what the rest of the year holds. But you can see that out of 100 people here, 46% of them thought that we'd have a recession this year. 24 said it would happen in 2021, and 10 said it would happen in 2021. But the same exact people that predicted a recession also projected that the housing market would continue to grow. As you can see, in 2020, it says it's going to grow by 2.8%. Right here in the Portland metro market, we're growing at about 1%, which is fantastic news because the more stable and closer it is to zero, the more of an indicator it is that we're in a very strong market. And then as you can see in 2021 and so on into 2023, it's going to grow. It could grow between 2.5 and 3.4%. So let's just be clear here. We have people that they're saying a recession is going to hit, and the same exact people say that the housing market is going to grow. So that is why another strong indicator that even if we did have a recession, this would not be a repeat of 2008.
The next thing we want to talk about is appreciation. So this is really interesting. Why don't you walk us through that?
Yeah, so this talks about, what happened to this previous 6 years leading into the 2008 versus 2020 time periods. As you can see in 2008, the house home appreciation values were just absolutely soaring. You can see all the way up to 12.5 and 11.4% there in 2005. The market was very volatile. It was up and then stair-stepped again and then stair-stepped again. That's what I talk about. When you see these big swings and increases or decreases, that really indicates a volatile market. And there was also a very, very volatile lending industry, and they saw these adjustable rate mortgages. So what people were getting is, say, they were getting a 5-1 ARM. ARM stands for ARM, adjustable rate mortgage. So the first year of their mortgage was, say, 2%, and then it went to 3 the following, 4 the following, 5, all the way up until the loan was capped out. Sometimes the mortgage would go from $1,500 a month all the way up to $3,000 in 5 short years. Everybody was expecting that housing prices to continue going up, and they would be able to sell their house at the end of their adjustable rate mortgage, or they would be able to refi and they would be free and clear. Well, what happened was the market collapsed, and that wasn't what happened, which is why we saw so many foreclosures on homes, because there was just all these false values in the home. But if you look at the last 6 years here in 2020, the market was very stable. You see it going from 4.4 to 5.2, 5.5, 2017, which is when there was almost zero inventory on the market. It was down to 1.3 months of inventory here in Portland. I sold a house then in my own. I had 24 offers and went for 70,000 over. So that's what happens when you have a very strong demand and no inventory. And then now 2008, 2019, we're at that 4.8, 4.7 mark, which is still, it's very similar to the early or mid 2000s, so 15, 16. But in Portland, we are sitting at about a 1% appreciation value, which once again leads to a very, very strong indicator that our market is very solid.
That is one of the reasons out of the 5 what makes it different from the '08. So let's get into number 2 with mortgage credit.
Yeah, so this is what caused, for the most part, the industry to collapse. So if you look at a mortgage credit availability index, the higher the index number, the easier it is to get a mortgage. The lower the number is harder it is to get a mortgage. So the closer to 100 is the lending regulations tightening up. As you can see, in 2004 to 2005, we were at an all-time high of how easy it was to get a mortgage. I remember being at the age of 19 years old, making $10 an hour. I made like $19,000 a year, and I went to my lender and I put out an application, and they said I could get a house for $350,000. I remember I was only making $19,000 a year, and my mortgage was about $19,000 a year. So basically 100% of my income after taxes was going to go to my mortgage. Now, in today's industry, we have the tightest regulations that we've ever had. Ever since COVID hit, it's tightened up even more. We're at an index of 152.1. So essentially, it's 6 times harder to get a loan today than it was in 2008, which means a couple things. One, the lending industries has the best insights for what you are going to be able to afford. When we talk to our clients, we never ask them how much they want to spend on a house. We always ask them how much do they feel comfortable spending. And if they tell us they feel comfortable spending $2,000 a month, We reverse engineer that backwards for them so that way they can see the value of the home that they're going to purchase. We never ask them how much of a home they want to buy and then try to squeeze them into a mortgage. That is completely false. That is completely wrong. Our lenders' commissions are not based on the size of loan you get either. Almost 90% of the fees that go into a loan are due to taxes, insurances, and different regulations. So out of a $10,000 loan, $5,000 might go to prepaid taxes and interest for the loan. $4,000 might go to all the prepaids and fees that the state regulates. Then the lender might make $1,000. So 10% of that loan typically only goes to the lender. And when you purchase a home, all the real estate fees are paid for by the listing agent's client, so which is the seller. The seller always splits those commissions with the buyer's agents 50-50. So if you're purchasing a home with us, you don't actually pay anything out of pocket for the home purchase of the real estate agent's commission. The listing agent's client, which is the seller, always pays those fees. So, and the listing agent splits those fees. So when you hear someone saying that they are getting charged 5% commission, that listing agent's making 2.5%, the buyer's agent's making 2.5%.
Yep, and this is definitely one of the strongest differences from '08 to now. I mean, that friggin' housing bubble, 868, that's incredible. All right, so now we'll jump into number 3. The third difference from '08 to now is homes for sale. Get into the inventory.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is another strong indicator that there was an issue. You had all of these people buying houses. You guys remember all of your friends and family saying that they were selling a house and making $100,000, $200,000 in profits, and there was enough buyers out there. The thing was, is when we had tons of inventory back then, as you can see in here, sometimes it was up into the, 10% range, 12% range. In Portland, it got up into 20% range after the market collapsed. But even at the height of the economy, or in 2006, 2007, it was sitting at that 8-9% mark. That's crazy when you have so many people buying houses with unregulated lending processes. So when you have a high supply and a high available asset pool from the banks, guess what's going to happen? There's going to be a lot of fraud. There's going to be a lot of people out there purchasing houses. And what they thought is they could buy a house today for $200,000 and sell it in 5 years and make $200,000, which we knew that eventually that would completely dissipate and go away. But if you look, and that was in that time frame, we were actually sitting in a buyer's market, which means that we had 6 or more months of inventory. 7 or more months. 4 to 6 is a balanced market, and anything below 4 is a seller's market. Currently, if you look at the previous months leading into our current state of time, we are sitting into what we call a seller's market. Currently in Oregon alone, we're at 1.8 months of inventory. So if we were to stop listing houses today, we would actually run out of houses in 1.8 months. But let me say something to be clear about this. In March, we got the report exactly a month ago. We were sitting at 1.9. So everyone's like, oh, this is before COVID, blah, 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 blah. The thing was, is since COVID hit, our inventory has actually decreased. Yes, there's less buyers out there, but we're having less sellers put their houses on the market, and we're still having the same amount of people buy houses. I said in my last video that 50% of those houses were going back on the market, but even with that said, we are still seeing our inventory decrease. So those back on the market houses aren't actually affecting the inventory rates. With that said, we are still in a very tight competitive market. And like I like to say is, people aren't stupid out there. People know what they're getting themselves into, and they know what they're doing when they sell their houses. If somebody needs to sell their house, they're going to sell their house. We know that there's a lot of built-in equity in our clients' portfolio, but we'll get into that in a few minutes.
But I just want to reference real quick, if you have not seen it, we did do a market update for Oregon and Washington. We did an entire video on that last week, so you guys can watch and get way more information on that. So with that being said, the use of equity, slide number 4, the difference here. Let's go through that.
Yeah, so the use of equity. A lot of people are using their houses like piggy banks. They were doing cash out refinances. And as you can see here, year 2005 to 2007, there was over $824 billion in assets being used out of their house. That means people pulled that money out. They were buying secondary vacation homes. They were buying their dream car that they always had. They were buying a boat. They're going on lavish vacations, and then they blew the money. And guess what? When they thought they were going to sell their house down the road, they couldn't, or they needed to refi at a lower rate. And guess what? There was no equity in their house. if you look out cash out refinancing in today's market in the last 3 years, there's only $232 billion out there. Typically, what people use is cash out refis for remodeling their houses. Maybe their child's going to college. Maybe maybe they are using that money to put a nest egg down to buy a secondary rental property or something. But that's why it's so important to work with a professional mortgage advisor to teach you exactly what the benefits are to using your funds, because when you do need to make a decision on utilizing some assets, you're making the best decision possible for you and your family.
And without any further ado, this is an incredible slide. Number 5. Talk about just how much equity on average people have these days.
Yeah, so when I mentioned earlier that I believe that people aren't stupid and there isn't a way out if they needed to get a way out, a couple of things. One is America right now is doing everything they can to protect the home buyer, whether it's really, really strong lending guidelines, whether it's, people getting company assistance with, mortgage forbearances and letting people pay their mortgages a few months late if they need to. Maybe it's doing the same thing with your car loan or your credit card bills being delayed. There's so much assistance, and it's so great to see everyone pulling together on this, because like I said, it is a health crisis. People aren't just doing dumb things that cause us to go into a crisis situation. But here's a mind-blowing stat, and why it's another strong indicator why we are not going to see what everyone thinks we're going to see in 2008. 53.8% of all homes in America have at least 50% equity in their home. That means that number blew my mind, but it actually was very, very on par of what I see as a realtor. We see that 1/3 of all home sales and purchases here are actually done with cash. This stat actually says that 37% of all houses in America are owned outright, free and clear. That means they have no loans on them. So if someone doesn't need to pay a mortgage, why would they feel that they need to go into foreclosure? We can see right here that 1/3 of the houses are already protected. 26.7% of the houses have over 50% equity. So these people have so much insight and they have so many options if they did get stuck into a hard position. If you look back when the market was actually in 2005, 2006, people were overextending themselves and had very, very minimal equity in their houses. I think the number was the average person only had, I think, like 13% equity in their house because they were all overextending them and they were falsified numbers of how much the home value is actually at.
We're going to just wrap this thing up real quick, but in your opinion, like, how did this happen? How did 54% of people have more than 50% equity, here in the last few years?
Yeah, so what it is, a lot of these people took advantage of buying houses when they were in foreclosure back in 2010, 2011, 2012. And what we see is the average person cycles through a home every 7 to 10 years. Mm-hmm. So right now would be the most common time that if people bought in that time period that they're buying again. And with the value of homes increasing, every year after year, more than likely the value of the homes have gone up based on natural value increases due to natural appreciation values. So when you have a very small amount of inventory available and you go to put your house on the market, you're going to get fair market value. In today's industry, when we put houses on the market, we put them on to sell in the first week because we all know that the longer a house sits on the market, the more likely someone's going to come in and lowball their offer because they already see the house has been sitting on the market. That's why we can look at true market values of homes, and we look at the comps in the neighborhood. And then obviously there's some give and takes based on, its location, its condition, and, that just location, condition.
Right.
And just location and condition pretty much.
All right, so there's the proof in the pudding, the stats, the data. There are huge differences between 2008 and where we're at now. But let's just sum and wrap everything up. Your thoughts, opinions.
Yeah, absolutely. So the bottom line is, like I mentioned earlier, the acronym TIC, trends, indicator, conditions. As we know, the trends, what are the trends? We have low inventory and we still have a lot of buyers out there. Interest rates are still very, very smooth. And the lending industry is got the highest regulations that we've ever seen. People have more assets built into their house than ever before. So I still think that we're going to see a very, very solid market moving forward. I don't have a magic 8-ball. I do not know what's going to happen in the future, but with the government and with, big businesses and employers really working together to, make sure that everyone is protected, people are being very forgiveful. And I would even say that even if somebody did foreclose on their house due to the corona situation, I do think there's going to be some very, very big mitigation talks at the table to help these consumers out. Because even if you do fall behind on your home payment, you can still go to mitigation with the title companies or with your bank and try to work out a plan to get the house sold. So therefore, you're not buried. Also, one thing I will note is that buying a bank-owned house in today's time is way different than it was buying a bank-owned house in 2010. In 2010, people were just dumping inventory because the government bailed them out and gave them all their money already. In 2020, guess what? When you buy a bank-owned house, that bank owns the title of the freaking deed. So therefore, they're wanting to get all of their money out of the house. I've written multiple offers on multiple bank-owned houses at full price, and it's been rejected because not only does the bank want the money for the house, but they also want to be able to cover the realtor's fees. So that's why you're not seeing a lot of foreclosures out there in the market. Also, you need to see at least six inventory level of 6 to even see us start to hit the foreclosure market. So we still have such a giant shift to go back the other way, which we haven't seen since like 2010 to even get us in the foreclosure land. Yeah, so a really cool stat that I just read is that during the 2008, 2010 post housing crisis situation, we were seeing about a 4 to 5% national average of foreclosures, which meant short sales, auctions, foreclosures. Right now we are actually seeing under a 1% rate of foreclosures.
Good.
So I mean, the number has gone down significantly, about 80% down over the course of the last 100 years. Someone might think like, oh, that number is very small. What does that even matter? Over the course of the last 100 years, that average nationally has been 3% year over year. So I would say that, it's very unlikely that this would ever cause us to see what happened in 2008 again, because what happened in 2008 was that we were being frauded by the government with the lending industry. People were creating money that didn't exist. They were falsifying home values that weren't out there. Lending industries have gotten tighter. We've seen it in the stats here. People have more money and equity built in their house than ever before. They have many more options to exit if need be. But the best thing that I can even advise you to do is just talk to your local lender or your real estate agent if you are in a position that happens, because there are refinancing options. There are home equity line of credits available. There's so many different safety nets out there to make you feel protected. And I do want to state that if anybody does want to have a private conversation one-on-one, I'd be more than happy to jump on a Zoom call and have those conversations just to see what we can do for you. And if you ever just want to chat data, I love talking about numbers and I love looking at history.
Yeah, this is absolutely what happens. We get calls, text message, emails every day, and Jesse has these open conversations with you. And so I think the one thing that he's stated over and over in a lot of these videos is we're never pushing you to anything. In fact, we're going to really work through everything, get you here, make you understand the neighborhood, the housing market, the equity, everything. So that is a huge difference, and Jesse pours a lot of time and effort, as you saw, into helping every client. So in order for us to give you that stellar treatment, you got to reach out to us. Give us a call, shoot us a text, send us an email, or even send us that pigeon carrier. However you want to get a hold of us, we got your back when moving to the Portland Metro. And until the next video, we'll catch you later.
We'll catch you later.